There's a subtle sin that so many fall into every day without realizing the profound and eternal impact it can have. In this video, discover the extraordinary story of Rachel Matthews, a 36-year-old woman who spoke face-to-face with Jesus during a profound near-death experience after a brutal car crash. Through her journey, she witnessed the profound consequences of living with this sin and its impact on countless lives. This experience transformed her perspective, and she made it her mission to share this truth with as many people as possible, hoping to inspire others to strengthen their faith. Before we dive in, if you want to hear more testimonies like hers, consider liking this video and subscribing to join us in exploring more of these powerful experiences. Without further ado, Rachel, all attention to you.
Thanks for having me. My name is Rachel Matthews, Chief Marketing Officer and mom of two from Austin, Texas. I grew up in a small-town church where faith was woven into everything we did. As a teenager, I was passionate about God, leading youth group meetings, singing in the choir, and always looking for ways to help others. But as life went on, things got busy. Between work, family, and the pressures of adulthood, my faith became more of a habit than a heartfelt connection. I still believed, but my prayers were quick, my Bible mostly untouched, and church felt like another thing to check off the list. That morning began at 6:30 a.m. like every weekday. My alarm buzzed, and I rolled out of bed, rubbing my eyes. Michael was already up, pouring coffee, while I packed Emma and Jake's lunches. By 7:15, I had the kids bundled into the car. Our drive to school was noisy, full of laughs, and their usual backseat arguments. We pulled into the school drop-off lane at 7:40, and I waved goodbye, watching them disappear into the building. Then it was back onto the highway, heading to the office. By 8 o'clock, I was stuck in traffic, flipping through radio stations while imagining the small family trip we had planned for the weekend. The air was warm, and the sunlight glinted off the rows of cars ahead, blending into the monotony of my morning commute. Little did I know, this routine drive was about to become anything but ordinary. Traffic crawled along as I inched forward, distractedly scrolling through the radio stations. My mind was miles away, juggling thoughts about work deadlines, the kids' schedules, and everything else I hadn't gotten around to yet. I was just a few blocks from the office when it happened. The light turned green, and I accelerated into the intersection, but out of nowhere, a speeding car appeared out of nowhere on my left, running a red light at full force. Before I could react, there was an ear-shattering crash. My car spun, the world a blur of sound and motion. In that moment, I understood this was the end. My last thought was of my kids as I whispered, "I will always love you. Both of you." Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in my car. I wasn't sure where I was. It felt otherworldly, unlike anything I had ever seen or imagined. The first thing I noticed was an overwhelming stillness, a silence so profound it felt alive. The surroundings were unfamiliar, bathed in a golden light that seemed to pulse with life itself. I stood, feeling no pain, no weight, just an unexplainable peace. Suddenly, I sensed a presence behind me. Turning, I saw him, Jesus. His eyes were a mix of unimaginable love and piercing truth, and the moment our gazes met, I felt as though every hidden part of me was laid bare. "Rachel," he said, his voice both gentle and commanding, "there's something I need to show you. It's a truth my people must know." Before I could respond, the golden light around us began to shift, and I felt myself being drawn into a journey that would change everything I thought I knew. The golden light around me shimmered and shifted as I stood, frozen, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I looked down at my hands, expecting to see them trembling, but they weren't. In fact, I felt no weight or physical sensation at all. I was both there and not there, as though my entire being was suspended in this surreal space. My mind raced with questions. Was I dreaming? Had I died? Was this real? Jesus stood before me, his presence overwhelming yet calming. I couldn't take my eyes off him. His face was familiar in a way I couldn't explain, as though I had known him my entire life. His expression held a perfect balance of love and authority, and his eyes seemed to see straight into my soul. Where am I? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. You are in a place beyond the world, you know, he replied gently. This is not the end, but a beginning. His words didn't completely make sense, but somehow I felt comforted. I thought about the crash, the blinding chaos, and the last thought I had of my kids. My heart ached, and I blurted, my children. What about my children? They are safe, he said, his tone soothing. But right now, Rachel, you must focus on what I am about to show you. I nodded hesitantly, unsure of what to expect. Jesus gestured, and the golden light around us began to morph. Images started to appear, faint at first, then clearer. It was as if I was watching scenes from a movie, but these weren't just any scenes. They were moments from my own life. I saw myself as a teenager, full of zeal for God, praying fervently and leading others in worship. Then the images shifted to my adult years, where my faith had become a routine rather than a relationship. I watched myself rushing through prayers, skipping devotionals, and letting the noise of life drown out the voice of God. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized how distant I had become. Why are you showing me this? I asked, my voice trembling. Because you have been living half-heartedly, Jesus said, his tone firm but not unkind. Your faith has been lukewarm, and it has kept you from truly knowing me. His words hit me like a wave. I thought about the church services I had attended out of obligation, the prayers I had whispered without meaning, and the times I had chosen convenience over commitment. Shame washed over me, but Jesus' gaze never wavered. It wasn't condemning. It was full of hope. But it's not too late, he continued. That's why you are here, to understand what must change, not just in you, but in many of my people. I swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of fear and anticipation. What do you mean? I asked. Jesus reached out his hand, and the light shifted again. This time, I saw faces, countless faces. Some were joyful and radiant, while others looked lost and burdened. These are my people, he said. Many follow me with their lips, but not with their hearts. They are consumed by distractions, by sins they don't even recognize, and by a world pulling them away from me. I stared at the images, my heart breaking for the lost and the weary. What can I do? I asked, desperate to know my role in all this. You will see, Jesus said, his voice filled with promise. But first, you must walk with me. There are things I need you to witness and understand. With that, the light around us shifted again, and I felt myself being drawn into what I could only describe as the beginning of an extraordinary journey. The peace I had felt earlier was now mixed with a sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, I knew it would change me forever. The journey began with a sense of motion, though I wasn't walking. It felt as though the golden light carried me, each pulse drawing me deeper into the space. Jesus walked beside me, his presence reassuring but commanding. As we moved, I noticed the images shifting again, this time faster and more vivid. I saw scenes of everyday life, families sitting together yet disconnected by glowing screens, individuals consumed by ambition, and believers passionately worshiping in one moment, only to speak words of bitterness or neglect in the next. Each image seemed to hold a message, an unspoken truth about the state of the world. My heart grew heavy as the weight of it all began to sink in. This is what I see every day, Jesus said, his voice calm but filled with sorrow. My people have become distracted. their focus is divided, and their hearts are not fully with me. I wanted to look away from the images, but I couldn't. The scenes were too raw, too real. I saw glimpses of myself in those moments, rushing through life, offering God only the remnants of my time and energy. "I didn't realize," I said softly, my voice breaking. "I didn't see how far I had drifted." "Many don't," Jesus replied. "The world has a way of pulling hearts away from what truly matters." The light around us began to shift again, slowing and settling into a single image. It was a church service, filled with people singing, praying, and lifting their hands in worship. At first glance, it seemed beautiful, but as I looked closer, I noticed something missing. The passion in their expressions seemed hollow, the words spoken out of habit rather than conviction. "This is the sin," Jesus said, turning to face me, "the one that grieves my heart most deeply." I stared at him, confused. Worship? But how? "Not worship," he clarified. "Hypocrisy. To call me Lord with lips but deny me with actions. To proclaim faith but live as though I don't matter. It is the lukewarmness of the soul, the absence of true devotion, that leads so many astray." The weight of his words settled on me, and I felt an ache deep within my spirit. "What can I do?" I asked again, desperation creeping into my voice. "You must live differently," Jesus said. "Not just you, but all who claim to follow me. It is time for my people to return to their first love, to live with undivided hearts." As he spoke, the scene began to change. I saw myself again, but this time I wasn't rushing through prayers or distracted by the busyness of life. I was present, intentional, fully surrendered. The image filled me with both hope and conviction. "It's possible," I whispered, "to live like this." "It is," Jesus said, his gaze steady, "but it requires a choice, a daily surrender to my will, a commitment to seek me above all else." I felt something shift within me, a clarity I hadn't known before. The excuses I had made, the distractions I had allowed, all seemed so trivial now. "I want to change," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I want to live the way you've shown me." Jesus reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder. But before he spoke, his eyes softened with a mixture of sadness and hope. "I have heard these words before," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of countless promises made and broken. "So many have stood where you are now, Rachel, filled with resolve and determination to change. Yet the world pulls them back. It is relentless." Tears welled in my eyes and I shook my head. "I won't let that happen. I can't," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "What you've shown me, it's too real, too important." Jesus studied me for a moment as if searching my heart. "I believe you, Rachel," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "But know this. The choice to live differently must be made not once, but every single day. Each moment, you will be faced with distractions and temptations." I nodded, feeling the enormity of his words sink in. "I understand," I whispered. "I promise I'll do everything I can." Jesus' gaze softened further, and he smiled, though it was tinged with a sadness I couldn't fully understand. "Then go," he said finally. "Return and share what you have seen. Call my people back to me." The light around us began to fade, and I felt a gentle pull, as though I was being drawn back to where I had come from. But before everything faded completely, I heard his voice one last time. "Remember, Rachel, I am always with you." When I woke up, the world felt different. The beeping of machines surrounded me, and my family's worried faces came into focus. Michael held my hand tightly, tears in his eyes while Emma and Jake stood beside him. their expressions a mix of relief and fear. "You're awake," Michael said, his voice breaking with emotion. I squeezed his hand weakly and smiled. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm so sorry for scaring you all." In the following weeks, as I recovered, I shared my experience with them. At first, it felt impossible to put into words, but as I spoke, I saw how deeply it affected them. Michael, always logical and reserved, was moved to tears when I recounted the moments with Jesus. Emma and Jake listened wide-eyed, asking questions that pushed me to reflect even deeper. My recovery was slow but purposeful. I began making changes, real changes. Morning prayers were no longer rushed. They became sacred moments to seek God's presence. I reconnected with my church, not out of obligation, but with a renewed passion for community and worship. I even started sharing my testimony with others, calling them to examine their own hearts. Though the journey wasn't easy, it was transformative. The fear of returning to my old ways lingered, but Jesus' words echoed in my heart. The choice must be made every single day. And so, with every sunrise, I chose to live intentionally, fully surrendered, and truly alive. My story is a powerful reminder for us all. Are you living fully surrendered, or has the world distracted you from your faith? The choice to walk with God is not a one-time decision. It's a daily commitment to seek Him, love Him, and live for Him wholeheartedly. Don't wait for a wake-up call like mine. Start today. Open your heart, silence the distractions, and return to your first love. Jesus is calling. Will you answer? Choose Him now and every day, and I promise your life will be transformed, just as mine has been.